Yeah, there was a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't think we could do it. Some people thought we were a Ponzi scheme.
Nearly 19 million Americans live in what the USDA calls food deserts. These are neighborhoods where the nearest grocery store is more than a mile away. And in places like Imperial Beach, that's not a statistic. That's the reality. When the last grocery store closed in 2016, the more than 26,000 residents of the city lost their only full-service grocery store. The big chains looked at the numbers and they decided the community was not worth serving or investing in. But this is where the numbers can get it wrong. A group of residents, neighbors, mostly women, refused to accept that answer. They decided that if corporations wouldn't build a grocery store, they'd build one themselves, and they'd own it themselves. I'm David Alvarez. This is Dreaming Big, Working Hard, where we talk to people about building stronger communities across San Diego and beyond. My guest today is Kim Rivero Frank, a founding board member and the board president of Suncoast Market Co-op. You need to get to know that name. Kim is part of a community effort that spent the last 10 years or so turning a neighborhood meeting into a $3.6 million cooperative, a grocery store owned by the community, which just opened its doors. Together, they recruited over 1,300 member owners, people in our community, and they secured funding from the city, the county, and USDA, and hundreds of individual investors who put down $200 of their own money because they believe their neighborhood deserves fresh food. This is a conversation about what happens when communities stop waiting for someone else to solve their problems. Thank you, Kim, so much for being here. It's really, really an honor to have you to share the story of the co-op. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So let's start by talking a little bit about you and your story and how you got to where we are today. We'll go through that journey, but love to learn more about you and your personal story.
Sure. So, well, I'm from a big Mexican-American family from Boyle Heights, East LA, and food was very much a part of my, growing up. Family gatherings, going to mass and then having menudo on Sundays and then, but we had kind of a limited, food palette, growing up. My dad was kind of a picky eater. So, didn't see a lot of, didn't get to experience a wide variety of foods. And then as I got older and got married and we started learning about, trying to eat healthier and stuff, really, been on this journey of, incorporating more fruits and vegetables and really getting excited about, how, improving food access and making it more equitable to everybody. And, even when it was funny when I went off to college, as I went as a transfer student to UC Santa Cruz, I got a job as a baker in the coffee house there at the college. And I got a couple days of training and then I was on my own, 4 a.m. baking. And at one point, one of the managers came in and I was making the sauteing what I thought was the spinach for the quiches. And he said, "What are you doing to the romaine lettuce?" And for like 2 weeks, I'd been making romaine lettuce quiches, but I didn't know, I didn't know the difference between romaine lettuce and spinach because the only lettuce I'd ever seen was iceberg lettuce. So, now we have a vegetable garden in our home, and I really learned to appreciate, how good it is to have, fresh vegetables. Yeah.
And so you're a San Diegan now. You've been here
Yes.
for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
You've been to Imperial Beach is where you call home, which is a South Bay community, and it's one of the communities that was food desert. We'll talk about what that is. There's
Right.
actually a definition, and I have a little experience myself growing up in Barrio Logan. I'll share with
Right.
you. But how did you end up in Imperial Beach?
So we moved to San Diego area, and I think it was 1984 to find good jobs after we'd graduated from college. And I spent a lot of my career working in programs to promote the health and well-being of children and families. So I worked at the County of San Diego Health and Human Services for like First Five San Diego, Child Welfare Services, and we moved to Imperial Beach. We kept trying to move closer to the coast. We lived in a lot of different places in San Diego, and my brother-in-law grew up in Imperial Beach, and he kept saying, "I think you guys would really like Imperial Beach." So we started hanging out down there and just loved the vibe, loved the diversity, loved how neighborly, and it's such a sort of a tight-knit community. People care about their community. And so we moved to Imperial Beach, and after I moved there, I realized, wow, there's not a lot of, grocery store healthy food options
Yeah.
here. Community is really saturated with fast food restaurants and liquor stores. And I noticed even going to the, grocery store, not too far outside of town in San Diego, it just seemed like the produce there wasn't the same quality. It was kind of like, it seemed like, our local grocery stores were getting like the B grade produce instead of the, the really good produce. So, I just wanted to, found out that there was a group of people we had a new shopping center coming in, and people were rallying to try to get a good grocery store in our community. And it just became very apparent that the stores, people were trying to get a Sprouts or a Trader Joe's, that they weren't going to open in our community.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately typical of too many places in our country and society.
Right.
Certainly, I know Boyle Heights a little bit. It probably was what would be defined as a food desert, just like Barrio Logan, where I grew up, where it wasn't until my 30s that we had our first grocery store.
Wow.
And so there was those liquor stores that you talk about, or you'd have to go and find a store somewhere outside. I know we spent a lot of time going actually on the trolley down to Tijuana to the Mercado to buy the fresh produce that you're talking about that you wouldn't be able to find in some of the stores that don't go into some of our communities.
Right.
What can you share with folks what you've learned about food deserts and why decisions are made not to bring grocery stores to some communities?
Yeah, well, I think, these stores, they have their own metrics that they're looking for, what they think, is they've decided is their recipe for success. And, I think they're looking at the, socioeconomic factors, the demographics. A lot of these stores, are opening in, upper middle class, communities. So in our, lower moderate income communities, you just don't have the same range of stores in your community that you would if you were to go to, Scripps Ranch or Carmel Mountain or Encinitas, places like that. And, it's a shame because, good food should be available to everybody, good quality food. And, I think, especially for our children, we want them to have the best access to, they're growing, their bodies need the best that we can give them.
Yeah.
And so we need to have good stores in every community.
And so what is the definition of a food desert? We've been using that term quite a bit, and there's an actual definition of what that is.
Yeah, so the U.S. Department of Agriculture looks at it as low income and low food access communities. So basically it's communities, that have, lower incomes. They tend to have not a lot of options or, no or limited options for full service grocery stores. And Imperial Beach very much fits that model. So, so we were able to, find grants that were available, for communities in food deserts. And a lot of the food co-ops that have opened in the last 20 years are actually located in very diverse, low, moderate income communities that are considered food deserts.
We'll talk about that journey for the co-op for sure. But as far as Imperial Beach, there's 26,000 people in the city. It's not like it's a small little town.
Right.
And so for there not to be a grocery store, a full service grocery store, it just seems like that can't be, or that sounds unrealistic. But that's how this whole co-op story got started, right? There was the last store had shut its doors.
Right.
And like you said, the community really wanted something of quality, but nobody wanted to come. And so tell me about like when that realization happened to the community, the story, so that we all know how that came to be.
Sure. So it was around 2015. There was a shopping center that was finally going in an area, a lot that had been vacant for a long time. And so that's when people really started to, advocate. The city was advocating going to grocery store conferences and stuff, trying to recruit grocery stores. And it became apparent that, there weren't quality grocery stores, weren't interested in coming into the community. So actually it was a group of moms that had, started a petition to bring in a store. And somebody said, well, why don't we open a food co-op? And a lot of people didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people still don't.
Yeah.
They're not very common in Southern California. But there's other parts of the country where they're very common in the Midwest and the Northwest and the
They're
East.
so uncommon here that this is only the second
Yes.
co-op in San Diego County, which
Yeah.
is a pretty large county.
Right,
And
right.
the first
Yeah.
one since the 1970s.
Yeah.
That's how uncommon they are.
Yeah. So yeah.
So what sparked the idea? I mean, it sounds a little bit like, okay, if we don't have any other co-ops, like
Yeah.
this doesn't sound like it can really happen. I
Yeah.
assume you got a lot of that in the beginning from some
Oh
folks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people didn't think we could do it. You know, some people thought we were a Ponzi scheme. It was crazy. But, you know, I think what I've learned about cooperatives, which I think is really cool, is, you know, they typically form consumer cooperatives, which means that it's a business that's owned by the consumers, by the people that use the services, that they tend to grow where there's a need that's not being met by the public sector or private sector. So, for example, like electrical cooperatives started in rural areas when farms and rural communities couldn't get access to electricity because it wasn't profitable enough for the electric companies to come out there.
Yeah.
So they created their own electric companies. And same with like credit unions. They're also cooperative businesses. And they started when people, you know, in rural communities, inner city communities couldn't get access to capital.
Yeah.
So similarly with food co-ops, you know, there's been times throughout history where some, you know, came out of mutual aid societies where people in certain communities couldn't get access to food, or all they had was like a company store from their factory that was taking advantage of people. So they'd band together and cooperate and buy food in bulk and sell it, you know, to their members. So,
And that's the story here that really is inspiring to me. Is it was people coming together.
Yeah.
It was, in this case, moms coming together.
Yeah.
I assume
Yeah.
out of real need to make sure that their children were growing up in a healthy environment as it relates to food options.
Right.
Which, you know, there's been several of those stories in San Diego County. I can think of one just down the street from Imperial Beach in San Isidro, the San Isidro Health Center, which was opened by a group of moms, 5 women, who were tired of not having access to healthcare. And so they started to, you know, pull together resources and call doctors, and that's how this now very successful health nonprofit is all over San Diego County. But the origins of the story is what really I admire, and I want you to share a little bit more about, you know, the moms, the women, and I mean, it started that way, but then you started to amass an army of people who really believed in this.
Right, right. So yeah, it was you know, our initial organizing group was it was majority moms, but we also had we don't want to leave the guys out because they're also very important to this. But yeah, and it's been amazing and really rewarding to see, you know, people coming together to really make a change in their community, and you know, and the talent you find in your community, you know, where we all came from very different walks of life, but people are coming in and doing, you know, dedicating their time to help, you know, do the bookkeeping and do the marketing, and, you know, building things now that we're opening the store, you know, or have opened the store, you know, building things for the store.
Yeah. Well, when I was there before it was open, your husband was volunteering
Yes.
his time, who's an architect,
Right.
and he was, as good architects do, attention to detail. He was
Right.
using this fine brush to do some beautiful painting to accent a wall and the shelves. So everybody was putting in their time and effort.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see. And, you know, we had a community member who is like 3rd generation salvage business in National City. So he knew how to buy used equipment through auctions. So we were able to get used equipment, you know, for the back of the back area of the store, which saved us a lot of money. We've had people like volunteer their time to, you know, to hold fundraisers like in their backyard. And we've built such a great community of people who care about their community, want, you know, increase access to equitable food, support local farms and businesses. One of the other cool things about the co-op is we want to bring, you know, more local products in and also support our local farms as well. And then that makes our food fresher, you know, that we're selling at the store.
It's sourced nearby. And
Sourced nearby, exactly.
When it all got started, and again, you were there in the beginning, you probably didn't think, oh, we're going to get the guy who can find us the equipment from salvage, right? Like that just sort of naturally happened. And I think this is like a movement because people
Yeah.
are attracted to movements.
Yeah.
I've seen that, and we read that in history,
Right.
from big movements to community movements
Right.
like this one. So you demonstrated, I think, to the community at large that, okay, this is really something we can do, and then people really bought in.
Right.
Speaking of buying in, there's also, tell us about how people own a part of the
Yeah.
co-op. I don't fully understand what that is,
Right.
and so what does an owner mean to a co-op,
Sure.
and how
Yeah.
accessible it was made in this case?
Yeah. So, one of the cool things about the co-op, it's not owned by a corporation. It's not owned by, distant investors. It's really owned by the community. And so how that happens is people purchase 2 shares in the co-op, and then you're an owner. Some co-ops, like credit unions, they call their the folks that are participating members, but we call them owners because we really wanted to emphasize that community ownership. And so people pay one time $200. They purchase 2 shares, and then they get a say, more of a say in what the co-op, is offering. They vote for the board of directors. They can run for the board of directors. We're all, owners in the co-op. And, our decisions are really guided by our shared values and by what our community needs, and not by, corporate headquarters or distant shareholders. And then we've tried to make it through a lot of community conversations that we've had. How do we make that affordable for everybody? So a couple things that we did is we offer a $10 a month payment plan. So if you can't afford to pay $200 up front, you can do it over time. And then the other thing we were able to do is through donations, we were able to offer folks that are facing financial hardships the ability to purchase $100 in shares instead of $200, and the other $100 was funded through donations.
And just to clarify, it's a one-time. You're not paying this
Exactly.
on an annual basis. So once you're an owner, you're an owner.
You're an owner for
So I saw
lifetime.
the map. I remember when I came to a tour as you were getting ready to open. You've got folks from all over the county, but a lot of concentration in South Bay, which that was really exciting to see.
Yeah, and it took a lot of the folks, of course, we're in the stores in Imperial Beach, and a lot of the folks are in Imperial Beach, but also our service area includes Nestor, San Ysidro, South Chula Vista, actually up into the Coronado Cays.
Yeah.
And then we have people that have joined from, farther around too, who just love the model, or, maybe they like to come to Imperial Beach. It's a great place to visit. So yeah, there's people from all over the county that have joined, and actually anyone in California can join if they're interested.
Well, and among some of the research that I've seen, I'd love for you to share is someone might think, especially, okay, we haven't had one opening in decades here.
Yeah.
They don't exist all over the place. Doesn't sound like a sound financial model that's going to work. But what I've read, and share, please, your thoughts or your knowledge of this, is that of grocery stores that open, whether it's co-ops or corporate owned, the co-ops seem to really survive and thrive at better rates than the ones that are corporate owned. You see more closures of those stores. Is that something you've identified?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms even of just like small businesses opening, cooperatives food co-ops have a better track record, just because there's so much. We spent, 10 years building community support. We're starting the store opening with 1,500 owners. And so these are all people that already are committed, customers that want this store to succeed. And what they see in the food co-op world is, food co-ops, most of the food co-ops that are open right now have been in existence for 40, 50 years. And so they really stay around for decades, for generations, because a food co-op isn't going to, move to greener pastures,
where they're going to make more money. That's
where they're
not
going to
really
make more
the intent.
money.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's just, it's really built. And they also are able to adjust. They're more flexible in changing with maybe a changing community, because they so much reflect what it is their community needs. So we saw that it was interesting in the pandemic that, when we saw our food supply chains were challenged because of long food supply chains, because, you might have a poultry plant, closing, that co-ops were able to pivot and, address their community needs, and also because they did more local sourcing.
Yeah.
So.
Sometimes the question that rises, and I've talked to a few people about the co-op, they're like, well, what kind of food do they have there? Like there's this belief that these are like high-end,
Right.
organic, not the type of product that a normal family, normal, put that in quote,
Right.
eats.
Yeah.
What would we find at the co-op?
Yeah. So because, there's a saying in the food co-op world that if you've seen one food co-op, you've seen one food co-op
Mm,
because they're all so, so unique to their community.
yeah.
And so a lot of the food co-ops that opened in the 70s were very much focused on organic, natural, because that's what people were looking for then. And you couldn't get that, it was hard to get it. So now the food co-ops that are opening, a lot of them are opening in very diverse, low, moderate income communities. So we are what we're calling a hybrid store. So we want to bring more natural, organic, and local foods to our community, but we also want to serve the whole community. So we not only have more natural and organic and local than a conventional grocery store, but we also have value price conventional items so that everybody can afford to shop at the store. So we were very fortunate to become a member of the National Co-op Grocers, which is a cooperative of food co-ops. And they provide merchandising support, marketing, but they also are able to negotiate better prices than we would be able to get as an independent grocery store.
Okay.
So you can come into the co-op and you can see the brands that you buy, major brands, particularly in the center store, like canned foods, packaged goods, things like that you see at any, grocery store. But we want to have price points for everybody. So we call it like good, better, best. So we might have, a can of beans at this price. Then we have our value brand of organic beans, which is called Wild Harvest. So it's organic, but it's really affordably priced. And then we have the higher end beans. So it's, a little something for everybody. And then on the outskirts of our store, like our produce department, that is primarily natural and organic. In our prepared food section, we have a lot of natural organic. So we're going to have the only salad bar in Imperial Beach. We have a hot food bar, and it's really focused on providing good, nutritious food for families.
So if you're looking to go grocery shopping, you can go grocery shopping, because I think some people think like, well, it's only if I'm looking for specific items do I want to go to a store, like a specialty store. Like sometimes co-ops are labeled. And yeah, you have a full and amazing kitchen to prepare food. So, for obviously it's a working class community and we're all very busy, especially those of us with kids. And sometimes we just got to grab and go.
Yes.
So we have that option as opposed to the I don't know how many fast food chain restaurants there are down Coronado and Palm Avenue there in Imperial Beach, but now there's another option.
Yeah, exactly. We have a lot of busy families. Baseball and soccer are really big in Imperial Beach. And people don't always have time to, cook for their families. So we have really delicious, hot meals in our hot food bar that you can get. You can get grab and go, packaged meals to make it easy for our families to be able to do that. Yeah.
So you're open now.
Yes, we're super excited.
How do you feel about the journey from when it started? I've been able to be a part of some things, maybe not as big as this one, but that have started from nothing and they've become something. And the pride in the community when they participate in that, whether it's like building libraries or new parks, like that's really exciting. But to see where you all started to now the store is up and running and people are coming and you have customers. That journey, I think it's an important one to reflect on. What are your initial thoughts as you just get started here?
Yeah. Well, it was really emotional, actually. It was so much work. We never thought it would take as long as it would. We met many challenges, whether it was, construction delays or even, trying to find a location first. Trying to find a landlord who would lease to us. We had flooding a couple times when we had bad rains, surprisingly in San Diego, inside the store. Fundraising, has just been incredibly hard to raise over $4 million to open this store.
Well, I want to say that because in a community like this where we don't have that kind of resource in terms of dollars, because that's not the community that we are. That's pretty amazing to pull off and pretty significant. Not any nonprofit can do that. And unfortunately, I often say San Diego's got a lot of wealth, but sometimes they don't look south. And this is like the southwest corner of the country, Imperial Beach. And so to pull off $4 million is pretty significant.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. It was a lot of work, but we really lobbied and advocated, and we had people supporting us, our local elected officials. Were very supportive in all of this, and then we really, a lot of food co-ops that had opened in the past had opened in upper middle income communities where they could rely on their community to do owner loans or purchase additional, they call them preferred shares, to fund the co-op. We knew that we couldn't do that. So we really looked we looked at what are the resources that we have in San Diego and what are the resources that we have on our board and in our community. And there is a lot of philanthropy in San Diego. So we really, used all of our connections to try to connect to these philanthropists. And we were very fortunate to find some really generous philanthropy. Yeah. We were able to get city and county grants, foundation grants. And then we had just a lot of, community members donating what they could as well.
You and I have not talked about this. We talked about a lot of this stuff, but we have not talked about, I'm intrigued. When or who, if you can say, did it feel like, okay, like you kind of were going up a hill and you kind of sort of reached the top of the hill and like, was there a point either with a donation, and you don't have to name it, but like because I feel like in big movements and big, when you try to do big things, it's not until you reach that then everybody else is like, oh, let's go in. You know, it's the going up the hill. Yes. That's really the hardest. And those, you will always remember, all those moments and who was there.
Right.
Like, when was that turning point, or that like, we're like, okay, this is going to happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we had several hills that we hit. One was when the American Rescue Plan Act funding came out after, nearing the end or middle of the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. And we were able to get a sizable grant from the city of Imperial Beach using their ARPA funding. So that was huge. And that was really a catalyst for bringing in a lot of other funding where funders could say, okay, the city is supporting this, this is, we should support it. We also had a local philanthropist who just, really became supportive early on, and really that made a big difference. And they connected us to a lot of other people as well. So that was huge. Mm-hmm. And then nearing the end, we were like really worried, are we not going to make it? Because we had this, $600,000, left that we had to raise. And we were able to get another sizable grant from the county. The Prebis Foundation came through for us. Mm-hmm. So it was just, I think all of those relationships that we had built over that 10 years, we could go back out again and say, hey, we're at this point, we're so close. Can you help us? Yeah. And the community really rallied around it.
Yeah. Well, it's a good example of what I like to share with a lot of people. When you want to accomplish something big, it's going to take a lot of work and dedication. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, it's the hardest. And it's when you can't give up. Yeah. Right? And you certainly didn't give up. And the folks who were there didn't give up. And then once you start to build some momentum, then it really gets going. And I think acknowledging, government has a role to play. Mm-hmm. You talked about the city, giving a grant, and kudos to the leaders. Yes. I think Mayor Dedina at that time. And Councilmember Paloma Aguirre, who's now a supervisor.
Yes.
And so it matters to elected officials when there's a group of people organizing and passionate and believing in something and working so hard. Oftentimes, these elected leaders don't lead, but they follow. They follow the community. And but we do need government to play a role. And then we do need philanthropy, especially in communities like these where it's just not going to happen because the resources are not there. We need people to step in. And so it's a great example of like what it takes to build something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you're open, obviously want it to be successful, invite people to come and shop. You want to create some stability, I assume, short term, but like what do you see like into the future?
Well, I see us continually evolving, continually, seeking the community's feedback and input. What the store that we are creating is very unique, and our community is very unique in terms of our diversity. And also we have the Navy, Silver Strand Navy base, which is right there with something like 3,000 people every day there. So, really thinking about, serving the community, asking the community, tell us, we have our suggestion box, we're going to have a survey on, we have in the future, we'll have a survey on our receipts, asking people for their feedback. So really continuing to grow, and then the other thing we really want to focus on is increasing our how much we are sourcing from our local businesses and local farms, because San Diego actually has a lot of farms, but they're small farms. They don't typically grow enough to sell like at a corporate grocery store, but they could sell their food at a co-op. And a lot of food co-ops are like, 50% local, like in their produce department. So we really we're working on building those relationships with our local farms. There's a cooperative of farmers in San Diego called San Diego Food Shed Cooperative.
Okay.
And so we're working with them and also local small businesses. So we have some local soaps in our store. We have some local pasta sauces, pickles, bread makers. So continuing to grow that too, which makes our store really unique. And they're also, it's, those profits, those are helping local businesses, and all that money is recirculating, in our local economy.
Yeah, it all stays local, and it all helps create jobs, economic activity.
Exactly, yeah.
Better quality of life.
Right, right.
What about for other communities? Because there may be folks who are listening. I know certainly, the communities I represent still, some areas with food deserts, they're inspired to do this. Like, obviously, you need some people who really want to do this.
Yes.
That's key. But what are some of the potential future opportunities for them? Like what have you maybe created not a game plan, but some sort of something they could follow here?
Sure. Well, there's a couple things. One, for food co-ops in particular, there's a national nonprofit called the Food Co-op Initiative that helps food co-ops open. So they were tremendously helpful to us. We're their 190th food co-op in the last 20 years that they've helped to open across the country. And then second, I'm engaged with some other folks in San Diego County, and we've created a cooperative ecosystem strategic plan. And the idea is like, how do we, our economy is not working for everybody the way that it should. So how do we create more opportunity, more community ownership? And how do we create an ecosystem in our county that is more supportive of cooperative enterprises? So these could be not only food co-ops, but worker cooperatives where your business is owned by the workers. It can include housing co-ops, land trusts. So we are working on that right now, and we invite people to reach out if they're interested in finding out more, to see how we can, make our economy here in San Diego County work better for more people.
Well, Kim, it's really a tremendous honor to have you here,
Thank
be
you.
able to share the story. It's an inspiring story. You're literally doing something that hasn't been done for 50 years.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen in communities like Imperial Beach. And so really proud to know you and the work that you've done, and to be able to see it from this idea to it actually becoming a reality. It is inspiring for those of us who want to do more work in ensuring that our communities have access, whether it's access to, in this case, to food, access to healthcare. We have, in the community I live in now, we have a grocery store, but now we have no pharmacy, right? And so there's still a lot of needs in our community, and so it demonstrates that people coming together, organizing, working hard, dedication took a while is what it takes to make things happen. Very proud of you and all of you, and wish you the best. And we'll hopefully see people soon at the store. Where are you located?
Yes. Yeah, please come visit us and see the only one of two food co-ops in San Diego County. So we're at 600 Palm Avenue in Imperial Beach. And everyone's invited to come. You don't have to be an owner to shop at the store. So please come check us out and support your local businesses, local farms, and enjoy some great food. And thank you so much for letting us tell our story.
It's great to share with everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Kim, thank you again. This has been a great conversation about grocery stores, but really it's been an amazing conversation about what communities can build when they decide that waiting isn't an option for them. And I hope you're taking something away from this conversation. Food deserts are real. They didn't just happen by accident. They're the results of decades of policy choices, decisions that are made from corporate interests to policy decisions, and communities have been left behind. Obviously, the 19 million Americans that live in a food desert, more than a mile away from a grocery store, are feeling it. And in communities like Imperial Beach and others here in San Diego, that shapes everything: their health, their family budgets, how people spend their time, their quality of life. The cooperative model works when communities own their own stores. We know that stores stay open. The research is pretty clear of that. And Suncoast is proof that this is possible. And finally, it takes time and it takes showing up. Years and years of work, 1,300 members that are owners, dozens of volunteers, countless hours in grant applications and setbacks, as you heard from Kim. But that's how community building occurs. If you want to support Suncoast Market Co-op, visit suncoastmarket.coop. You can become a member, owner, donate, or just learn or go shop at the store. See what they're building. And if this story made you think about what your community needs, check out the Food Co-op initiative at fci.coop. They've helped launch more than almost 200 co-ops across the country. I'm David Alvarez. This is Dreaming Big, Working Hard, and we'll see you next time.